Hey there, and welcome to Family Revenge. We're so glad you're here. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can stay with us for every twist and turn. Let's jump right in. My name is Jessica. I'm 34 years old, and I'm the CEO of a rapidly growing hospitality empire. It's been a long, hard road, but I've built something from nothing. My days are a blur of meetings, contracts, and strategic decisions, each more crucial than the last. And to be honest, I'm proud of it. Today was no different. I sat at my desk in my sleek corner office, a glass of water at my side, reviewing reports for one of our new luxury event venues. The space was perfect, modern yet elegant, just like everything I worked to create. My phone buzzed, the name flashing across the screen making me pause. Amanda Sterling. She was a wedding planner I had worked with a few times, but today, something felt off. I swiped to answer, bracing myself for whatever news she had to deliver. Hi, Jessica. Amanda's voice sounded more formal than usual, and I could tell she wasn't calling just to catch up. Amanda, how's everything going? What's up? I asked, maintaining my professional tone even as curiosity started to settle in. Well, Jessica, it's about Emma's wedding, she said, pausing. Your sister, Emma, she and her fiancé have decided they no longer want you to attend. They've asked me to uninvite you. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I fought to keep my voice steady. Wait, uninvite me? What do you mean? I've been helping with the planning? I've paid for the venue? Yeah, well, Amanda hesitated. It's a bit complicated. The family is concerned. They're worried about the guest list and some, dress code issues. They don't want you to be a distraction at the wedding. It's a very curated event, and they think it might be uncomfortable if you attend. My mind was racing. Distraction? Uncomfortable? Was she seriously telling me my own sister was excluding me from her wedding? For a moment, I couldn't speak. But then I remembered. Everything I had done for Emma, for the wedding, I had paid for the venue, the catering, even helped with the dress shopping. I had been there every step of the way. And this was how I was repaid? I took a deep breath, pushing the wave of frustration aside. I wasn't about to lose my cool over this. Amanda, I think you should know something. I own the venue. The Grandview Manor? That's my property. Emma doesn't know that, but I've been helping her fund this entire wedding. I've taken care of every detail. Amanda was silent for a moment. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head. You own the Grandview Manor? She finally asked, her voice a mixture of disbelief and admiration. Yes, I do, and I'm not going to let my sister or anyone else make me feel like I don't belong at my own family's event. If they want me uninvited, I'll just have to handle things differently. Thank you for letting me know, Amanda. I ended the call before she could say anything more. A sudden sense of calm washed over me, though I knew a storm was brewing. I had always kept my success quiet. My family still saw me as the struggling artist, the one who had never quite figured it out. But this was the moment everything was about to change. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. Not when I had worked so hard to build something that could rival their precious, curated event, with all their polished smiles and superficial concerns. And as the evening light filtered through my office windows, I knew I had a choice to make. This wedding was going to be the catalyst for something bigger. 3 years ago, things were different. I wasn't the CEO of a booming hospitality empire. Back then, I was just a woman trying to make ends meet. My family still thought I was barely scraping by, struggling to keep up with my artistic dreams. To them, I was still that aspiring artist who couldn't hold down a steady job. They had no idea I was quietly building something far greater than they'd ever imagined. It all started with a simple renovation project, a modest ballroom that I bought with the help of my side business in digital marketing. My family assumed I was working another low-paying job, struggling to make ends meet. But in reality, I was running a thriving digital marketing business under a pseudonym. They never knew that side of me, and I kept it that way, fearing they would look down on my success, or worse, expect too much from me. I had my reasons for keeping everything private. My father never fully understood my path. He saw art as a hobby, not a career, and certainly not a lucrative one. The tension was always there, that unspoken judgment. He wanted me to follow a more traditional corporate path. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the validation. He couldn't wrap his head around how I made my living. But I wasn't just doing it for the money. I was doing it to prove to myself that I could succeed, to show my father, my family, that there was more to me than they had ever seen. I kept my family in the dark for years, letting them believe that I was just getting by, even as I secretly invested in my first venue. The Grandview Manor was my first major purchase. I didn't tell anyone about it, not even my closest friends. It was my secret, my little empire in the making. For a while, I split my time between running the digital marketing company and overseeing renovations at the manor. It wasn't glamorous. The first ballroom was modest, nothing like the luxury spaces I'd later acquire, but it was a start. And slowly, quietly, I transformed the space. People took notice. Event planners, wedding organizers, they started asking to book the venue. It wasn't long before I realized I had something valuable on my hands, a quiet gem in a bustling city. With each venue I acquired, I became more confident. I quietly expanded, my success growing by leaps and bounds. But I never shared it with my family. I kept the truth hidden, fearing that revealing my success would bring unwanted expectations. My parents didn't understand the work I put into my business. They didn't understand the sleepless nights, the risks, the endless emails and calls to vendors and contractors. They wouldn't see it as real work. They'd just see another one of my ventures that was too risky or too unconventional. By the time I bought my third venue, I was already a successful businesswoman, but my family was still none the wiser. I kept up the act, continuing to play the role of the struggling artist, even though I was living a completely different life. Sometimes I questioned whether I should have told them. Should I have shared my success? But I knew the answer. I wasn't ready to face their judgment. I wasn't ready to hear my father tell me it was all luck, or my mother remind me that I wasn't like the other successful people they knew. They were proud of me in their own way, but not in the way I wanted. They didn't understand my journey. As the years passed, my empire grew, but the family dynamic remained the same. Every time I saw them, I was still the failure they thought I was. They still couldn't see the woman I had become, and I had become very good at hiding it. So good, in fact, that even when I paid for Emma's wedding, they never asked where the money came from. Now, as I stood there, listening to Amanda tell me that my own sister had uninvited me from her wedding, it hit me. The realization wasn't just about the wedding, it was about everything I had kept hidden. The family that still saw me as the girl who couldn't make it, who was barely getting by, while I was secretly building an empire that would soon be impossible to ignore. I was tired of hiding. Tired of being someone I wasn't just to fit into their narrow view of who I should be. It was time for them to know the truth, not just about my success, but about who I really was. The real Jessica, not the struggling artist they still thought they knew. And as I stared at my phone, that familiar unease swirling in my chest, I knew one thing for sure. Emma's wedding was about to change everything. I sat back in my leather chair, staring at the wedding contract in front of me. The guest list was finalizing, the final touches on the decorations were being put in place, but I couldn't ignore the numbers that jumped off the page. My family was spending an obscene amount of money at Grandview Manor, the venue I owned. It was always about the image with them, wasn't it? They never seemed to care where the money came from, so long as it was spent in the right way. I hadn't expected this to happen so soon. My family, who had always seen me as the struggling artist, was throwing a lavish, extravagant wedding at the very venue I owned, and they had no idea I was behind the entire thing. The catering costs alone were more than the amount I spent on my first venue renovation. But it wasn't just the money, it was the underlying message. They were showing me how little they valued me. They'd excluded me from the guest list, all because I didn't fit their idea of what success looked like. And now, the wedding was becoming the perfect stage for me to show them just how wrong they were. They thought I was just some failed artist, but no more. I picked up my phone and dialed Amanda's number again. I needed to make a few adjustments. When she picked up, her voice was tight, as though she already knew what was coming. Jessica, are you sure about this? I just spoke with Emma, and things are difficult with the guest list. She's not happy with the changes. Emma will have to get used to it, I said coolly. I've noticed some irregularities in the guest list, a lot of last-minute additions. And given the family dynamics, we can't risk anything tarnishing the venue's reputation. It's crucial we maintain the highest standards. Amanda hesitated. You're right, but we've already had a lot of back and forth. It's going to cause even more tension if we make changes again. Trust me, Amanda, I said, a smile creeping onto my face. It'll be fine. Just adjust the guest list, tighten up the seating arrangements, make sure no one feels out of place. It's important that we keep things professional, especially with the media coverage they're expecting. There was a long pause. I could almost hear Amanda weighing her options before she spoke again. All right, I'll make the changes. But Jessica, I'm warning you, this isn't going to be easy. Some of Emma's guests might be upset. Are you sure you want to go this route? Yes, I said, the word feeling final. This is the best way forward. I trust you'll handle it discreetly. I hung up before she could say another word. As I sat there, the power of the situation washed over me. My family thought they were in control, but they had no idea what I was really capable of. I could manipulate the entire event, expose their hypocrisy, and they wouldn't even know it was coming until it was too late. For the first time in years, I was enjoying this, enjoying the subtle role I was about to play in their lives. This wasn't just about a wedding. It was about reclaiming my place in a family that had always underestimated me. They wanted elegance and sophistication, fine. But they didn't know they were dealing with someone who had been quietly building her own empire while they dismissed her. My fingers hovered over my keyboard as I sent a quick email to my head of security. It was time to prepare for the unexpected. I could feel the tension building. The drama was about to unfold, and I was going to be right at the center of it all. And when the truth came to light, my family would finally understand who they had been dealing with all along. The night before Emma's wedding, I arrived at Grandview Manor, my heart pounding in my chest. There was no turning back now. Everything was set into motion, and tomorrow, the truth would finally come out. But for tonight, I had a job to do. Ensure everything went perfectly. I wandered through the grand halls, watching the team put the final touches on the decor. The chandeliers gleamed, their light reflecting off the polished marble floors. It was exactly what I had envisioned when I first bought this place. Elegance, understated luxury. I paused in front of the ballroom doors and peeked inside. Emma and my mother were doing a final walkthrough, making sure everything was just so. My heart tightened at the sight of them. My mother's wide grin, Emma's excited chatter about the dress and the flowers, the plans falling into place. They had no idea what was coming. But it wasn't just the wedding that was on my mind. It was their ignorance, their judgment. They still didn't know who I really was, who I had become. I'd spent years helping them, covering their bills, bailing them out, never expecting anything in return. But every time I showed up, they made me feel like an outsider. It stung every single time. I stood just out of view, listening as my mother commented on the final preparations. Her voice, once warm and loving, now felt cold and critical. "Do you think Jessica's going to show up in that thrift store dress again?" she asked, glancing over her shoulder at Emma. I felt the burn of anger rise in my chest, but I held my ground, refusing to let them see the hurt that still lingered. The truth was, they didn't care about me, only what I could give them. They never had. "I don't know, Mom," Emma replied, her tone cautious. "I mean, you know how she is. She doesn't really care about appearances. She just wears whatever." My mother huffed, clearly frustrated. "I just don't want her to embarrass us tomorrow." "This is a big day, Emma. You can't just let her show up in whatever she finds in a secondhand store. It's your wedding." I swallowed hard, the words stinging more than I wanted to admit. There they were again. The judgments, the dismissals. I wasn't good enough for them. Never had been, never would be. Emma didn't speak for a long moment, and I could hear the hesitation in her voice when she finally responded. "I guess I'll just have to let it go. It's been such a hassle already, you know. I really don't want to cause any more drama." "I understand," my mother said, her voice more sympathetic now. "But you have to make sure she understands the gravity of it all. It's your special day. She can't just be there, not when she doesn't fit in." I clenched my fists at my sides. The anger surged inside me, but I fought to remain calm. I wasn't going to let them see me lose control. Not now. Not when everything was so close to being exposed. But I made a mental note to myself. They would see me tomorrow. They would know just who I was. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the shadows, making my presence known as I walked toward them. Both of them turned around in surprise. Emma's face immediately softened when she saw me, but my mother's eyes narrowed in confusion, almost like she was startled I had shown up at all. "Everything's looking great," I said, keeping my voice steady as I approached them. "I'm just here to make sure everything runs smoothly tomorrow. I've got the security team on standby, just in case there are any issues." "Oh, of course," my mother said, her tone tight. "We don't need anything too extravagant, Jessica. Just make sure things are orderly." I bit back a sharp reply. She had no idea how much I had already invested in this event. In this family, it wasn't about being extravagant, it was about showing up and owning what I had built, but I wasn't about to give her that satisfaction. Not yet. Emma, on the other hand, gave me a small, tentative smile. "Thanks for being here, Jess. I'm really glad you're helping with everything." "Of course," I said, nodding. I wouldn't want anything less than perfection for you, Emma. After all, it's your big day. As I spoke, I could feel the weight of the years of sacrifice and silence pressing down on me. They had no idea how much they had taken from me or how little they had ever truly seen me. Tomorrow, though, things would be different. I made my way toward the staff office to check on the final arrangements. As I walked down the corridor, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from my head of security confirming that everything was in place. But I didn't open it just yet. I needed to focus. Tomorrow was the day everything would change. As I stood in the hallway, surveying the preparations, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Tomorrow would be my day of reckoning. It wasn't just about Emma's wedding. It was about my family seeing me for who I truly was, not the version they had built in their minds. I was no longer the struggling artist they dismissed. Tomorrow, they would finally know the truth. I was standing in my office the next morning, scanning through emails, when my phone buzzed with a new message. The notification popped up on the screen. Emma. I hadn't heard from her since the awkward exchange at the wedding venue, so my curiosity piqued immediately. I opened it. Hey, Jess. I know things have been tense. I'm really sorry for everything that's happened, and I want you to know that I never meant to hurt you. I've been thinking about it, and I don't want you to feel left out. Please come to the wedding tomorrow. I need you there. I hope we can talk soon. Love you. I stared at the words, my heart pounding in my chest. I wasn't expecting this. Not from Emma. But as the familiar warmth of her apology settled in, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a while. Hope. Maybe my sister wasn't as lost to her perfect wedding as I had feared. Maybe there was still a chance for us to salvage something between us. I sat down at my desk, taking a deep breath before I composed my response. Emma, I appreciate your message. I know this wedding is important to you, and I want to make sure everything goes perfectly. I've been doing everything I can to ensure that. And no matter what, I'll support you. I think the wedding will go smoothly if we focus on the important things, like your happiness. We can talk more later, but don't worry, everything will be okay. I hit send and I let the silence settle in. For a moment, I felt relieved. Emma's apology was genuine, but I wasn't sure if that meant we were really on the same page. In fact, I was still wrestling with everything that had happened, with how I'd been treated by my family for so long. But Emma had reached out, and that was more than I could have hoped for after the way things had been left. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Emma. This time, her message was simple. Thanks, Jess. I love you. See you tomorrow. The message settled deep within me. It wasn't just the words, it was the tone, the sincerity. Maybe there was still hope for me and Emma to rebuild something real. I couldn't deny that I felt touched by her reaching out. I had spent so many years being the one who gave, without expecting anything in return. Maybe it was time I allowed myself to receive something too. But tomorrow wasn't about me, it was about Emma. The day had to be hers, and despite all the drama, I wasn't going to let anything ruin it. I made one more call to my head of security to make sure everything would run smoothly. As I hung up, a sense of calm washed over me. The drama had stirred up, sure, but it was also bringing clarity. Clarity about my family, about my place in their world, and about what I was willing to tolerate moving forward. I wasn't going to fight this battle alone. No matter what happened tomorrow, Emma and I would figure it out. Together. The day of the wedding had finally arrived, and I stood in front of my full-length mirror, adjusting the custom gown I'd had made just for today. The dress was everything my family would never expect. Sleek, refined, and with just enough subtle luxury to make a statement without screaming for attention. A soft champagne silk flowed gracefully as I turned, admiring the way it draped perfectly against my body. I wasn't the struggling artist anymore. I wasn't the sister they excluded, the daughter they ignored. Today, they would see me. Really, see me. My heart raced as I stepped into the car, the chauffeur greeting me with a polite nod. I felt a flicker of anticipation. This wasn't just a wedding. This was my moment, the day I would finally stand in front of my family and show them who I had become. The drive to Grandview Manor felt surreal. It was hard to believe that I had quietly transformed this place into one of the most sought-after venues in the area. Now, it was about to play a crucial role in revealing my hidden success to my family. As I arrived, I could see the staff putting the finishing touches on the venue. The golden chandeliers sparkled in the soft afternoon light, and the room had been carefully arranged to reflect the elegance my family would expect for Emma's wedding. But it wasn't just about the aesthetics. This was my legacy, my silent triumph. Walking through the back entrance, I took a deep breath. It was time. I entered the ballroom just as my family was gathering in the front. I could hear their voices, Emma's excited chatter, my mother's frantic last-minute instructions, the guests arriving, but it was what I could hear that set the tone for what was to come. I wasn't a part of the conversation. I wasn't supposed to be here. I stepped into view, and the room fell silent. My mother's face froze as her gaze fell on me. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Emma, who had been chatting animatedly with one of her friends, stopped mid-sentence, her smile faltering as she saw me. And then there was my father. He didn't even recognize me at first. He stared at me as if I were a stranger who had wandered into their perfect world, and for a moment, I saw it. The confusion, the surprise, and yes, the recognition. I walked toward the head table, where they were all seated, still processing my presence. "Is there a problem?" I asked casually, my voice calm but laced with underlying tension. My mother's expression turned to one of thinly veiled annoyance. "Jessica," she started, her voice tight, "you weren't supposed to be here." "No," I said, raising an eyebrow as I took my seat at the table. "Funny, because I own this place. This wedding, in fact, has been largely funded by me. All of it. The venue, the catering, the dress, everything." The silence in the room was deafening. My parents stared at me, their mouths agape. Emma blinked a few times, her hand frozen midair, as she reached for a glass of champagne. "You own this place?" My father's voice was shaky, almost disbelieving. "Yes," I said, looking them all dead in the eye. "I own Grandview Manor, and I've been quietly financing this wedding." "Your wedding, Emma?" The shock on their faces was almost satisfying. I could feel the power shifting in the room as the truth sunk in. They had no idea who I really was. I was no longer the struggling artist they dismissed. I was a woman who had built an empire, one step at a time, with no help from them, and it was time they understood that. I... My mother tried to speak, but the words seemed to fail her. My father, who had always been so critical, shifted in his seat, looking like he'd just been hit by a freight train. "You never told us," Emma finally spoke, her voice trembling. "All this time?" "No," I replied, maintaining my calm. "I didn't. Because you never asked. You assumed I was just getting by, barely scraping through. But here I am, Emma, and I've been here all along, helping you, paying for everything. You never knew because I let you believe the story you wanted to tell. But it's over now. The truth is out." The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air. The room was still, everyone frozen in disbelief. My family had no idea what to say. This wasn't the version of me they had crafted in their minds. This wasn't the daughter they had written off. I looked at them, my eyes steady and firm. "You don't get to judge me anymore. You don't get to see me as the failure, the one who never made it. I've made it. And this wedding, it's not just Emma's celebration. It's a reminder that I built something for myself, and no one can take that away from me." The tension in the air was palpable as my family struggled to process the truth. I'd never seen them so speechless, so caught off guard. It felt almost surreal to be standing there, watching their shock unfold in real time. My father, still recovering from the shock of my entrance, finally broke the silence. His voice, typically firm and commanding, now quivered with disbelief. "I don't understand. All this time? You've kept this from us?" I met his gaze, unwavering. "Yes, I kept it from you, because I wanted to see who you were when you thought I had nothing to offer. I wanted to see how you treated me when you didn't think I could help you with money or prestige." The room grew even quieter. The realization settled in that this wasn't just about the wedding. It was about everything I had endured over the years. The dismissals, the assumptions, the unspoken judgment. They had never truly seen me, not for who I was or what I'd achieved. But today they had no choice but to see me. As I stood there, calmly asserting my truth, the weight of the moment sunk in. It wasn't just my parents who were listening. The wedding guests, many of whom I didn't even know personally, were starting to murmur among themselves. Whispers of surprise and disbelief rippled through the crowd. But it was when William Ashworth, Emma's soon-to-be father-in-law, stood up from his seat that I felt the real shift in the room. "Jessica, I had no idea," William said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "I've heard nothing but praise about the Grandview Manor, and I've always admired what you've done with your properties. I never realized you were behind all of it. Your business success is nothing short of impressive." A sudden quiet fell over the room. I could see my parents shrink back, the truth hitting them harder than any words I could have said. William's public acknowledgement of my success made their discomfort palpable. It was one thing for them to hear it from me, but quite another to hear it from someone else, someone they respected, someone in their social circle. I turned my attention to Emma, who had been standing quietly beside me the whole time, her eyes wide with shock, her face flushed with both embarrassment and gratitude. It was clear she hadn't anticipated this revelation, but there was something else there too, a glimmer of appreciation. With a shaky breath, she stepped toward me, her voice trembling. Jessica, I don't know what to say. I'm sorry. I didn't realize. Don't apologize, I interrupted gently, my tone softening. It's not about you. It's about everything that's happened up until now. This day is about you and Andrew, and I want it to be perfect for you, no matter what has come before. Her eyes welled up with tears as she stepped forward to hug me. Thank you. I never wanted to hurt you. I should have understood, but I didn't. I've been so caught up in trying to make everything perfect that I didn't realize how much I'd taken you for granted. I felt a lump form in my throat, but I pushed it down. This wasn't the time for a breakdown. Instead, I stepped back and gave her a small, reassuring smile. Everything will be fine, Emma. Don't worry about it. I'm here now, and I'm going to make sure your day goes exactly how you want it. Before I could say anything else, I pulled out a small envelope from my clutch and handed it to her. I have one more thing for you, a little wedding gift. Emma blinked at the envelope, confusion in her eyes. When she opened it, a look of complete shock washed over her face. Inside was the deed to a house, an investment property I'd bought with the intention of gifting it to her and Andrew. Jessica, Emma whispered, her voice choked. This is too much. No, I said firmly. It's not. You deserve it. All of it. Her tears started to flow, and this time I didn't try to hold them back. This was my family. I had wanted to be accepted for who I was, not what I could provide. But in the end, I'd given them something more than money. I'd given them truth. As Emma hugged me again, her body trembling with emotion, I felt the shift. Something had changed, not just in me, but in our relationship. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about respect, about recognition, and for the first time, I felt like I'd earned it from her. The wedding had ended, and the guests were slowly trickling out, leaving behind the remnants of what had been an unforgettable day. Emma and Andrew were whisked away for their honeymoon, and the staff began the cleanup. But my mind was far from the empty ballroom. I wasn't sure what was coming next, but I knew something had to change. I stepped out onto the balcony overlooking the garden, the evening air cool against my skin. I needed a moment to breathe after everything that had unfolded. The events of the day had hit me harder than I expected. The truth had come out, not just about the wedding, but about everything I had kept hidden from my family for so long. But the thing that lingered most in my mind was the conversation that still loomed ahead. And then, just as I thought I might escape the drama for a few minutes, I heard my father's voice calling from behind me. Jessica, he said, his tone different than before, softer, almost hesitant. I turned to see him standing in the doorway, his hands folded in front of him. He looked tired, older even, but there was something else there, something that hadn't been there before. Regret, or maybe at least the beginnings of it. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. He slowly stepped toward me, and as he did, I could see the weight of what he was about to say pressing down on him. I've been thinking a lot about what happened today, he began, his voice quieter than usual, and I know I was wrong. I waited for him to continue, but he seemed unsure of how to proceed. There were no more harsh words, no condescension in his voice. He wasn't angry, and neither was I. I never understood you, Jessica. Not really. And for that, I'm sorry. I've spent so much of your life trying to fit you into some mold I thought was right for you. I never stopped to think about what you actually wanted. I swallowed the lump in my throat, trying not to let his words affect me. But it wasn't easy. All these years of silence, of unspoken judgments, and here he was, admitting that he hadn't truly seen me, not for who I was, but for who he thought I should be. You're not the person I thought you were, he continued. You've built something incredible for yourself, and I didn't see that. I should have, but I didn't. I'm sorry. I turned to face him fully now, searching his face for any signs of real understanding. I wasn't going to let this moment pass without knowing for sure if this was genuine. I appreciate your apology, Dad, I said, my voice steady, but still tinged with years of unspoken pain. But I need to know something. Why are you apologizing now? Is it because you realize I've succeeded, or is it because you see me for who I really am? My father looked taken aback, his eyes flickering with uncertainty. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He wasn't ready to answer that question yet, not fully. I took a deep breath and pressed on. I've spent my life trying to prove my worth to you and to Mom, but now I need to set some boundaries. My success isn't about your approval. I don't need that anymore. What I need from you is respect. I need to be seen for who I am, not for the mistakes I've made or the expectations you've put on me. He stood still for a long moment and then nodded slowly. It wasn't much, but it was enough. I understand, he said quietly, and I promise, Jessica, I'll try to do better, not just with you, but with myself too. I've spent so long stuck in my own ways that I didn't realize how much I've hurt you. I let his words sink in. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation. It wasn't a magic fix for years of tension and resentment, but it was a start. And right now, that was enough for me. I need you to mean it, I replied. And not just because of the money or the business. I'm not just your daughter because I can help you with your problems. I'm your daughter because I deserve your love and respect, no matter what. He nodded again, this time with more certainty. I do mean it, Jessica. I'm proud of you. I'll do better. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was the kind of silence that comes after a long-awaited truth has finally been spoken. It wasn't perfect. We still had a lot of work to do, but for the first time, I felt like we might actually be able to heal. I'm going to go inside now, I said, my voice softer. I'll see you at dinner. He didn't try to stop me. Instead, he reached out and gave me a small but meaningful smile. It wasn't the same as before, the forced smiles, the ones that didn't reach his eyes. This one felt real, and for the first time, I felt like we were moving forward. The last guest had left, and the wedding day was officially over. Grandview Manor stood empty now, its grand halls quiet after the flurry of activity that had filled it just hours before. The remnants of the event, bouquets of flowers, empty champagne flutes, scattered napkins, sprawled across the tables. But in the midst of it all, I felt a deep sense of fulfillment. I stood by one of the large windows overlooking the gardens, the lights from the venue casting long shadows on the grass. It was hard to believe that just a few days ago, I had been standing on the outskirts of my family's world, feeling invisible. But now, everything had shifted. Emma and I had exchanged heartfelt apologies, and I'd given her something that had made her eyes well with tears. A house, a symbol of my support, and the way I wanted to show up for her. And it wasn't just her. Today, I had finally confronted my family, shown them the truth, and walked away with my head held high. I didn't need their approval anymore, not the way I used to. I had my own life, my own success. I had built this empire on my own terms. My phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me from my thoughts. I glanced down to see a message from Emma. Jessica, I can't thank you enough for everything you've done. I know it hasn't been easy, and I want you to know how much I appreciate you. I love you. I'm so glad we're on the same page now. I read the words several times before I set the phone down. A genuine smile crept onto my face. Despite everything that had happened, despite the judgments and the years of hiding, Emma and I had finally found a way to be there for each other. We were family, and that bond was stronger than any hurt or misunderstanding. As I walked through the quiet halls of the venue, my thoughts lingered on my father's apology from earlier. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't the final answer I had wanted, but it was something. He had admitted his mistakes, and for the first time in years, I felt like he saw me. Not just for what I could do for him, but for who I truly was. I had set clear boundaries. I had told him I wouldn't be just the daughter who was there for them when they needed money or help. I wanted respect, genuine respect. It was something I'd never asked for before, but I realized I couldn't keep living in a world where I was defined only by my success or failures in their eyes. For the first time, I felt a sense of peace with that. The healing hadn't been instant, but it had started. I was starting to trust that, with time, the dynamics in my family could shift for the better. My phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from my mother. I almost didn't want to look, but I did. Sweetheart, I've been thinking about everything. I'm proud of you. I want to make things right too. Let's talk when you're ready. Her words were softer, more measured, but I knew that whatever happened next, I wouldn't go back to the way things had been. I would never be the person they thought I should be. I wasn't going to bend to their expectations or hide myself anymore. As I stood there, looking out over the garden where Emma had just exchanged vows, I felt a shift inside me. I was ready for the future. The next chapter. The journey I had started so many years ago, building my empire from the ground up, had only just begun. But now I felt stronger, more authentic than ever before. I wasn't hiding anymore. I wasn't just the artist or the struggling one anymore. I was Jessica, and nothing could take that from me. I took one last look at the venue and walked out the door, the cool night air welcoming me with open arms. Tomorrow, the world would be different, and so would I. The day after the wedding, I stood in my office at Grandview Manor, overlooking the quiet grounds below. The house was buzzing with activity. Staff were cleaning up after the wedding, restoring everything to its pristine state. But in my mind, everything was already changed. The dramatic unveiling of my success had shifted more than just my family dynamics. It had changed me too. I no longer felt like I had to hide. No more pretending to be the struggling artist, the invisible sister, or the daughter they couldn't respect. For the first time in my life, I was free to be fully authentic. My family had seen me for who I truly was, and that revelation had set the course for the future. But the fallout hadn't been without its challenges. The phone had been ringing off the hook, mostly with media inquiries about my rise to success. My business empire was the talk of the town now, and the press wanted in on the story. I had spent years keeping my achievements private, fearing the judgment that would inevitably come with success. But now, I was ready to own it. I had nothing to hide. And then, there was my mother. She had called me several times, leaving messages that ranged from guilt-ridden apologies to passive-aggressive comments about the way I exposed myself and our family. She was still grappling with the fact that I was no longer the daughter they could control or dismiss. In some ways, I knew that was the hardest part for her. The realization that I wasn't just someone they could mold into their idea of success. I was a person with my own accomplishments and a new sense of independence. The last voicemail she left said, "Jessica, we need to talk. I don't understand why you felt the need to go so public with everything. You're hurting the family by putting everything on display like that. Don't you think this is all a little too much?" I listened to her words, but this time, they didn't sting. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel small. I simply pressed delete and moved on with my day. It wasn't that I didn't care about my family. It was just that I had learned to care about myself more. I turned back to my desk, scanning through emails and setting plans in motion for my next set of projects. The opportunities were endless now. No more hiding. No more holding back because of what my family thought or expected from me. I was the CEO of my own future. As I looked out the window again, I couldn't help but think about the conversation I'd had with my father the night before. The apology, though imperfect, had been a turning point. He had admitted to his faults, and while I wasn't going to let him off the hook so easily, it had opened the door to something real between us. It wasn't going to be an overnight change, but it was a start. And Emma. She had reached out, and I had reassured her that everything was going to be okay. Watching her walk down the aisle had been a moment of clarity for me. The years of tension, the judgment, the misunderstandings, all of it had faded away. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. I had given her a house, yes, but I had also given her something more. My support, my love. And for once, I had received the same from her. I smiled to myself as I clicked through my calendar, lining up meetings for the next few days. There was still so much work to be done. New venues, new contracts, new opportunities were waiting for me. And this time, I would take them on with full confidence, without any hesitations. For the first time in years, I felt the weight of the world lift off my shoulders. I wasn't the person my family thought I was. I wasn't the person they wanted me to be. I was Jessica, strong, capable, and unapologetically successful. And as I sat back in my chair, looking out at the horizon, I couldn't help but feel excited for what was coming next. This was only the beginning. The future was mine to create.